Hello there. Every year I go and see a lot of animated features, and each year I have a favorite that really sweeps me off my feet and impresses me with all the hard work and dedication the filmmakers and artists put into it. Well, my favorite animated film of 2013, for those who don't know, is Epic. This was an absolutely stunning motion picture that I feel captured the same level of size and scope in animation that can easily be compared to the likes of Lord of the Rings and Star Wars. When I left the screening, I thought this would be the movie that would do for Blue Sky Studios what How to Train Your Dragon did for DreamWorks. Show they have just as good an ability at creating dramatic, risky stories like we normally associate with Pixar and Disney. I actually think the level of storytelling is right up there with what we associate with The Lamp. However, the reception was instead more on the okay side, and I don't quite get it, because I personally think Epic did so much right in being a captivating, imaginative, and exciting adventure that I'm going to explore in great detail why I feel that way. I want to start off by saying I love when a storyteller or director can create an entire world and mythology from scratch. That's one of the big reasons I'm such a huge fan of the likes of Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Avatar: The Last Airbender, Harry Potter, and John Carter of Mars, and almost anything of that ilk. Epic certainly fits the bill in crafting an entire history and world for the Leaf Men to occupy. A lot of the credit for that goes to the film's director, Chris Wedge, and creator, William Joyce. Based on his book, The Leaf Men and the Brave Good Bugs, Joyce is about as far away from Stephen King or P.L. Travers when his books are optioned for the screen. He basically lets the filmmakers deviate from the source material as they see fit, rather than try and be as faithful as possible. So Joyce, Wedge, and the rest of the writing team did precisely that, as there really is a sense of how long the Leaf Men have been living and the society which they have cultivated. What's particularly amazing about the screenplay is how multi-layered it is. They throw so many subtle nuances into the universe and characters that becomes a sort of film that requires multiple viewings to fully appreciate. There is so much going on in the story and themes that it's easy to miss things the first time around. And I actually love when a film does that, and the discovery of new elements the more you watch something. As we go through the story, there are new little things that one finds out about the forest's history. While some are obvious, like the fact that they keep their entire archives in a tree they use to help guide the future, others are more hidden within the dialogue and the backgrounds and character directions. That helps in making this a fully realized and immersive universe, resulting in a very enriching experience for the audience. I love ideas like how in the Leaf Man world, even an innocent-looking mouse can be a ferocious and scary beast due to their size. Also, the way speed and weight are used is a major factor, so they can leap very high distances. Especially clever is the notion that very tiny things move so quickly they're difficult to even see and get a hold of. Emphasizing this is that to Leaf Men, people are so massive they actually come off slower than they actually are. It's obvious a lot of thought went into the crafting of this universe, and they didn't simply slap together fantasy tropes, which Epic actually manages to avoid. The careful attention to detail the writers made in crafting the Leaf Men's world is amazing, and this extends to the characters too. This is especially emphasized with the main theme of Epic: many leaves, one tree. Each character is individually handled to be fully dimensional and play a role in the overall framework of the story, so none are unnecessary. Let's start with our main protagonist, Mary Catherine. When we first see her, there's a real sense of history with her, and the film nicely explores that as it goes along. Certainly the most emotional is the death of her mother and how that affects her. This easily could have been played for cheap emotion, but Wedge never does that, as there's a sense she is mourning from this tragic event, and is struggling with how to deal with it, especially with her forgettable father buried in his work. From the get-go, I cared what happened to her, and this raises the stakes later on when she's thrust into this new world. I've said before that I don't like the workaholic father cliché, but Epic manages to avoid that. The main reason for this is that Mary Catherine doesn't act like a spoiled brat. She is merely confused as to why he is so obsessed with finding these tiny people that may or may not exist. Another cliché Epic manages to avoid is the chosen one trope, as she isn't shrunk down to save the Leaf Men. She is rather another piece in the puzzles. All the heroes bring their own individualism to the table in defeating the villains. Once again, Many leaves, one tree. MK is there to provide an outside perspective on the situation and utilize her own unique skills to help defeat the Boggans. As she continues to work with the Leafmen, her development is natural, as is the way she begins to understand her father and his eccentricities. MK isn't the only person feeling some pain and trying to overcome it through the course of the movie. Nod may seem like a brash young leaf man, but for years he's had to deal with the pressure of being like his heroic father, and it takes this journey to get him to realize what precisely many leaves, one tree means. He doesn't have to emulate his father, but like him, become a hero of his own making. Then there's Ronan, forced to grieve over the sudden death of his beloved queen, while still keeping a front of having everything under control. They also don't make him some superpowered being, even though he is a very strong fighter. He misses at some points, one time ultimately resulting in Queen Tara's death. Thus the stakes are raised that even he can occasionally not be a match for the Boggans. He is certainly an important leaf, but he needs the rest of the tree too. Even when he gets annoyed by Nod's actions, Ronan still realizes the importance of having him along and how it will allow him to grow. Also along for the adventure are Mub and Grub, a slug and snail who are responsible for keeping the bud that's so essential to the forest intact and moist. I think these two are the best animated sidekicks since Timon and Pumbaa. That's right, I put them in their notable company. In addition to being absolutely hilarious, they are actually quite pivotal to the plot, each with their own dreams and aspirations. They are not simply comic relief, but again fit in the whole notion of many leaves, one tree. Grub in particular has his own dream of being a leaf man, and the film nicely portrays both his excitement and uncertainty over if he can fit into the role. Their importance in keeping the bud moist furthers the film's theme that even if one is not a leaf man, they are still pivotal in keeping the balance of the forest alive. They merely use their slime rather than a sword. The Boggans, who serve as the villains of Epic, were criticized for being evil just for the sake of being evil. But that's hardly the case at all. First of all, going back to there being an entire history in this world, it seems like this war between the Leafmen and Boggans has been going on for centuries. However, it is not merely a case of good versus evil, but rather each side with their own ideals that they see as the right one, and in particular, land ownership. Each side sees the forest as their land, and the one they deserve to inhabit. In the grand scheme of things, it's probably not even that much ground they're fighting over, but of course, to them, it's a lot of forest, and it's emphasized by how they battle each other in the air, underwater, inside the trees, and so forth. This also reflects many real-life wars, which are fought over something as basic as land ownership, with history dictating what they feel belongs to them. The Boggans would say the Leafmen drove them out, while the Leafmen would say otherwise. That brings a sense of reality to this world. The other aspect that makes this universe feel more real is that the Boggans are fighting for survival, the rot being how they survive. I heard one criticism that asked, why do they want to destroy the forest? They have to live there too. However, it's pretty clear that rot is what keeps them alive, and Mandrake's plan to destroy the forest is not simply for giggles. This also comes from how trees do actually rot in real life, and nature tries its hardest to fix it. That's a nice touch from the filmmakers that makes the world of Epic feel believable. This also ties to how the film avoids any environmental messages. From the marketing, it seemed like the film would attach such a message, but it very much avoids that. There's no evil man-made force that comes in to destroy the forest, but rather this ongoing war between nature and, well, nature. While nature can be responsible for many beautiful parts of our environment, it can also be responsible for destroying the flowers and trees. If Queen Tara and the bud represent the photosynthesis, the sun, water, and all these elements that keep plant life alive, the Boggans serve as a representation of hurricanes, ice storms, earthquakes, and other earth-made things that can ruin our environment. Both the good and bad sides of Mother Nature, so to speak. I'm going to discuss the ending now, so if you've not seen Epic yet and want to avoid spoilers, I'm going to put a time on the screen that you can skip to in order to avoid this discussion. I've mentioned many times the theme of many leaves, one tree, that is central to the film, and that's especially true in the ending. Mary Catherine is a contributor to The Day Being Saved with her wit and quick thinking, but she's not the only factor. Nod and Ronan's combat skills, Nimglu's sage advice, Mub and Grub's careful protection of the bud, Professor Bomba's stomping and bat sonar sound effects, and even Queen Tara from Beyond the Grave help in saving the day. To me, that's a better message than the lone hero who does one extraordinary action we often see in family entertainment. Many leaves, one tree. One element that actually did slightly bother me the first time, that subsequently vanished on further watches, is a kiss shared between MK and Nod. The first time I watched Epic, I thought that was a weak attempt at forming a romance between the two, but on repeat viewings I realized that's not actually the case. Both characters have been through so much through the course of the journey, almost dying at points in this film, which doesn't pull any punches when it comes to death, and they know that she'll never become small again. As such, it's merely a goodbye kiss, representing the major adventure they both had, and how they both grew over the course of the story. As we would later see in Disney's Frozen, some things are not necessarily obvious at face value, and a kiss doesn't necessarily have to be romantic. As icky as it sounds, if Mub had been the one holding on to her, I'm sure they would have shared a smooch as well, which I'm sure that little slug would have been all the more pleased with. Back to non-spoiler territory, I also want to discuss the casting. We're used to big names being hired to do voices for animated features at this point, and occasionally it can feel unnecessary. However, despite the big Hollywood actors and musicians that fill the poster, all of them are perfectly cast in their roles in my opinion. Amanda Seyfried brought her sweet vocal cords to MK, making her even more rich than the already fantastically developed character that was on the page and storyboard drawings. Josh Hutcherson showed an immense likability as Nod, and Colin Farrell had the right gruff inflections when playing Ronan. It's no secret Christoph Waltz has made a name for himself playing villains, but he's able to show the right level of menace when playing Mandrake, with a certain sense of humor thrown in for good measure. Beyonce Knowles was actually quite regal as Queen Tara, showing her character's playful side as she interacts with Ronan and our favorite slimy sidekicks. I'm a huge Aziz Ansari fan, from his stand-up and his work on Parks and Recreation, so I thought he was perfectly cast as Mub, capturing some excellent comedic timing and wonderful chemistry with the similarly funny Chris O'Dowd. Jason Sudeikis also managed to be equal parts funny, enthusiastic, and mournful in the right places as Mary Catherine's father. One casting choice I was particularly surprised with was Steven Tyler as Nimglu. He actually managed to exhibit the personality of somebody with a lot of knowledge, but also a fun, kooky little character. Even his little song is not merely there as an excuse for the Aerosmith frontman to sing, but because it helps introduce the whole idea of the character. Sometimes getting merely celebrities to voice animated characters can be a case of giving the film attention on talk shows, but Epic was definitely an example where the voices were chosen because they perfectly fit the characters, and not because they are recognizable. And finally, I want to end off with discussing the animation, which I think is some of the best computer animation I've seen. The team at Blue Sky really went all out with this. One thing I love about their work is how each film they create has its own appropriate look and feel to it. Ice Age tends to have more jagged edges fitting the icy landscape. Robots is actually made to look like every single thing is metal. Horton Hears a Who captures the appearance of a Dr. Seuss illustration in a three-dimensional environment. And Rio has each segment of the city, whether it's the beaches or the favelas, be its own location, but befitting the tropical climate, if that makes any sense. For Epic, the artist did a phenomenal job of capturing how each leaf or lily pad or tree will look to the most amazing detail. Chris Wedge has said he wanted to make Epic have the feel of a live-action epic, and with the camera movements and the amazing attention to detail, he certainly succeeded. All this aids in making the action sequences all the more exciting. This applies to the character animation as well. Epic is smart in not having the human characters look like real people, as they are still visibly animated, but their movements are spot on how a real leaf man might move. Mary Catherine, mostly animated by Jeff Gabor, one of the best CG animators in the film industry, is quite possibly the best CG animated human I've seen yet. Every little tick and movement is exactly how a real teenage girl moves, which helped with what Wedge was trying to accomplish. Frozen got a lot of deserving attention for how it animated its female characters, But I think MK is in a whole other stratosphere with how she was animated. I almost wondered if they cheated and used motion capture, but no, that is 100% frame-by-frame computer animation. They really pushed the boundaries with this film. Honestly, the amount of sweat, blood, and passion that went into Epic is right up there on the screen. I think people underestimate how personal the films Blue Sky makes are to their filmmakers, a couple of studio-mandated sequels aside. Rio was made because Carlos Saldana wanted to make a love letter to the city he grew up in. Their upcoming Peanuts movie is being produced not because some higher-up at 20th Century Fox said, "Hey, there's a nostalgic market for this property. Can you make this into a movie?" Nope. It's a passion project of Charles Schultz's estate, and the screenplay was even written by his son and grandson. And Epic fulfilled Chris Wedge's childhood dream of wanting to make a big adventure akin to Star Wars. And all I have to say is, bravo, good sir. And to give a more of a personal touch of the film, Mary Catherine is named after William Joyce's daughter, who sadly passed away a couple of years ago, and I can honestly not think of a better, more heartfelt tribute to her. And I think the loss of her mother in the film is Joyce reflecting his own grief and sadness at losing his daughter into the character. I predict Epic will have a similar trajectory as The Secret of NIMH, another animated fantasy film that, believe it or not, at the time of its release was praised for its animation, but critics thought the story was okay, and it didn't exactly light up the box office. However, as the years have gone by and more people started discovering or revisiting the film on video, it started to gain a more appreciative audience. And Epic is certainly a film that lends itself well to multiple viewings, as so many subtle story and character threads are placed into the film that make it a lot more complex and three-dimensional than people initially gave it credit for. And that even includes myself. This is a beautiful, stunning motion picture, and I give Chris Wedge, William Joyce, Jeff Gabor, and the rest of the Blue Sky team a standing ovation for trying something different than what their studio is usually known for. And I think they triumphed superbly in creating an artistic achievement for the ages. Fantastic work all around.